you got to do something mentally, physically, psychologically to keep those things separate. Otherwise, you're going to carry all that stress over and you're never going to get a break. You're never going to be able to reset.
Welcome to Deduct This, powered by ProConnect Tax. This is where tax professionals come together to share ideas, experiences, and fresh perspectives to help you grow your practice and your future. We're glad you're here. Let's get started.
Hey guys, welcome. This is the Carrie and Lexi podcast. It's called Deduct This, and I'm Carrie.
And I'm Lexi. Are you still trying to sort things out after April like we are? And tax season is wrapping up and it's around the corner. This episode is all about how to reset your firm, refocus your time, and take back control as tax season wraps.
I'm so excited. We have Eric Schwarberg with us today. Eric, it's been a minute since we saw you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Always happy to be here.
So I'd love if you could first just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a tax attorney. I worked in tax law firms, small ones, maybe 10 people, from 2014 until 2020. When the pandemic kicked off, I switched over to working remotely from TurboTax.
Awesome. And all right, well, let's see. Right now, we're just a couple days away from the filing date. It is almost April 15th. And things obviously are very crazy this time of year. But if we kind of put that aside, what do you think about where are people at right now? Are they just in the chaos, or are they already starting to think about what's next?
It's hard to really separate yourself from the chaos that's going on right now, which is it's crunch time. It's definitely crunch time and people are feeling that stress and it's hard to think about anything else. But you also know every tax firm has it. There's people that are going to be on your docket after tax season ends. And so it's hard to separate those two things, even if crunch time is the main focus. You know that you have people hanging over after tax season is done and you know you're not completely done yet.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It really doesn't end April 15th, right? There's extensions, there's all of that that's happening right around the corner. So, I mean, you have so many of these other tax professionals as peers, and what is the one mistake that you think that people make right after tax season?
I think the biggest mistake that people make after tax season is not doing something to really separate tax season from the the extension, the summer season.
Yeah.
You got to do something mentally, physically, psychologically to keep those things separate. Otherwise, you're going to carry all that stress over and you're never going to get a break. You're never going to be able to reset.
So how do you find that balance then in resetting, but also not losing the momentum, knowing that you have all of this next deadline that's right around the corner?
I like to do things that create a major break, at least psychologically in my life. After April 15th, we do have, the 16th, you're probably fixing e-file rejects that were timely filed. So focusing on that and just making sure. And the point that I like to drive home to myself is that if they didn't get submitted by April 15th, they're already late filed. So even if they have everything for you and all this other stuff, they're already late filed and the late payment penalty gets accrued monthly.
Okay.
So you have until the end of the month to fix those people that didn't get things done by April 15th. And then if it doesn't get in, if they miss documents and stuff and get it to you in their first week of May, you have until the end of May to fix that problem. And breaking things down into those sort of chunks can really help with that. And then besides fixing that sort of thing, the big one that I really like to do is Wednesday, I may be fixing e-file rejects. Thursday, maybe I'm cleaning things up, but I like to take Thursday to really organize myself. And things get messy during tax season. The crunch really starts happening. You don't have time you fall out of your procedures. Take that reset day on Thursday to just clean up the administrative stuff and lay out what you have coming up. Who do you expect is going to be coming in before April? Who's going to be coming in May? What I'm going to need to do in June? So really breaking things down and making it into smaller chunks, that really helps. And then Friday, I take Friday off. I do something for me. And then when I come back on Monday, I pick things up. I take a long weekend and I pick things back up. And that's when I go and doing something on Friday that I've been putting off or that I really enjoy or spending time with family, doing something that you can look forward to on Friday and set it up in advance of tax day because then you're going to have that to look forward to and it really will create that break in your mind psychologically and will help you pick up on Monday more refreshed.
I love that. I love that. So how do you keep organized and think about, right? So, you've talked about the immediate days after and the thought of, I have to follow up with certain people. Do you sort of keep a running list of like, here's what I need to follow up on. Here's some things that they, maybe mentioned to me that I know that they'll want to work on this next year. How do you think about that? Like the going forward part?
Procedures are very important for managing stress. The way that I like to do things, I like to create, if I have an Excel spreadsheet, for example, I may have three separate sheets. The first sheet is this is what I have that is active that I can actively work on. And I have the customers there, I have everything there, so I have a list of them so I can work down that list. Then the second sheet will be people that I do need to work on, but I don't have everything that I need. And so that will, break down what I've already done, what I still need from the customer, and what needs to be done. And then the third list is people that I have already finished, but I need to keep notes on for next year or for other situations. And I'll keep that there. And then I will just straight up remove the customers, but as they move from one list to another, I will move them off that list because the smaller that work in progress list looks, the more mentally, it's psychological, but as that list shrinks or as you move people from the pending list onto the active list and then move them off to the completed list with the reminders. Psychologically, that really helps you feel on top and not overwhelmed.
I do the same thing. When I have a list of to-dos, I will sometimes add things. This is crazy. I will add things that I know I've already done because I need to see a check mark.
Oh yeah.
Which is crazy, but I agree. There is a mental kind of exercise that has to happen sometimes for you to push through when you are stressful and you have so much on your plate. You have to feel like there is progression forward. So I love that.
Yeah, it also it really helps psychologically, and then it also helps with just your organization. Because if you're scrolling through a list of all these people, it's longer. You're scrolling down pages and pages, looking through all these things. Which ones do I need? If you have a list of this is what is in progress, this is on hold, and this is completed, it's much easier to keep things straight as those lists move around, and you can stay on top of what needs to be done and what is a priority right now.
Yeah. And for years, the tax business has been so reactive, right? Like it's been just like you're talking about list and compliance driven. And there's been this huge shift into this like advisory forward. There's like, it's almost bridging the gap between, the entire financial picture, right? And so there's this notion and there's a huge buzz about advisory. And I'm so interested to hear, Eric, how do these firms and how do you really make sure that on top of all of the compliance things and the lists and all the things you have to do, how do you stay proactive and really be thinking about the next year? Because now you're already into the next tax season and advising your customers and your clients on what to do next.
Calendar reminders. I like to take that administrative day to figure out the timeline. Like I said, what do I need to have done this month, this month, this month? If I have people on a fiscal year end, I'll know when their fiscal year end is, or so we can have a conversation before they need to do any planning. I like to break things down and be like, when does this need to become a top priority? And by setting calendar reminders for those dates that I no longer have to remember that.
Yeah.
And that, again, psychologically, that will remove your stress because if every time you know that you have something in your mind that you need to do by a certain date, but you haven't set that reminder that you've offloaded that process of reminding yourself to do something, you remove one more thing that's going on in your brain in the background. So by setting up that calendar reminder and taking that administrative day to I'm not working on returns, I'm just getting organized for what comes next, and setting up those calendar reminders, creating those lists, cleaning everything up. That can really help you manage your stress into summer, and then you won't be taking that crunch time stress that we all feel coming up to April 15th into the summer. It'll help you reset.
Yeah, that's interesting. When we think about when you think about, like, Lexi, what you mentioned was interesting, right? The compliance to advisory and sort of thinking about these months, right? Hadn't I've been in the tax and accounting industry and talking to professionals for 20 years. And it's been very interesting to watch that shift. And what I found more and more, and so I'd be curious to see if this is true, is you have clients obviously that are coming to you all the time and they're like, oh, I heard this, or how can I do this? And quite frankly, how do I deduct this is really the answer that, the question that people are going to ask constantly. I know I do. And do you have certain months that you think about, right? Because a client has to do certain actions in order to create deductions. Again, whether it's the 401k and you're putting money in things, or you have a home office or things like that. This stuff has to happen in the year prior to you doing these actions. Do you think of certain times of the year, if you think of the calendar as a whole, as, hey, in these months, I should probably talk to these clients because they made this comment of, I want to move more into this, or I'm having a baby, or I'm moving, or my business is buying something. Do you think about chunks of time that way, about I should reach out to these people because if they don't do actions by this time, it won't affect the next year?
Oh, absolutely. We have the tax filing season that goes through April. So we have, everybody has to make their 401k or their IRA contributions and all, recharacterizations, conversions. All that stuff needs to be done by April. You need to get filed by April. Then we have the extension period, which is the summer, April until October 15th. And then after October 15th, some things happen during the year. And with those customers that have specific situations, a fiscal year that ends in the middle of the year, I set those reminders so I know that I have to address those issues at a strange time. But again, I do this same reset after October 15th. Okay, I'm going to take a day to get everybody filed that needed to be filed, that was they filed on the 15th, but e-file rejects or something like that happened. The next day after that, I'm going to do this administrative day where I plan out to the end of the year until January.
Mm.
And talking to my day traders that need to do, or investors that need to do tax loss harvesting at the end of the year, set a reminder to speak to them sometime in late November or early December to have that planning conversation. People that need to do things that need to be done by the end of the calendar year, which is the most common situation. You got to get it done by the end of the calendar year. Maybe they're going to buy that electric vehicle to try and get that conversation. The electric vehicle needs to be delivered in the tax year. So I will usually set that reminder out in like the end of November, maybe a little earlier, just so we can have that conversation if they're trying to get that EV credit or do those home improvements that are energy efficient, things like that have to happen within the calendar year. I set those as reminders. I may send, if I have time during the summer, I may send them those reminders or have those conversations. And you never know, some clients are going to be bugging you all summer about it. So handle those when you can. But if you don't, if you just set a reminder, like this is after October 15th, this becomes a priority for me. I need to pick it up and take and run with it, and setting those reminders there. And then, of course, you can handle people as they come in that, you know, when you have time over the summer.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, Eric, this has been so awesome. Thank you so much for your time. You have to tell us, what are you doing April 16th? How are you refreshing?
April 16th, I am still working, but April 18th, I am going golfing and then
Good.
going to the beach.
Good. I love it.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Hey, I do have, one more question. I'm just curious is when you think about, you mentioned a bunch of different laws that you were talking about, your day traders, your EV credits. How do you keep up to date with the changing laws so that you can make sure that you know the nuances of them so that when you reach out your clients, you know what things will be applicable to them or not?
Well, fortunately for me, working at TurboTax, we see people from all over the country. I work remotely, and I have people linking in from all over the country with vastly different tax situations. That's not always the case in smaller firms. When I used to work in smaller firms, we would see a lot of the same types of clients, the same small business, different business situations, but roughly we may have a very similar overarching type of clientele. So if you are in that situation where you have the really general practice that focuses mostly on one thing in particular, or you have a very similar set of clients and you don't get a lot of exposure to other things outside, it is important to also take time when it's slow. After October 15th is a great time for that because most people, hopefully, after October 15th will have been filed on extension. So clean up the ones you can, but that's a time to plan, to take continuing education, to research items, looking over different possibilities, reading articles and blogs and stuff online and doing research and getting familiar. That's a good time to do continuing education as well because it's a little bit less stressful and it's coming up on the start of the new tax year, so it'll be fresh for you.
What's one of your favorite resources, Eric? What can you suggest to like your peers that it's just like a good go-to for all of that continued education and learning?
A good resource, well, there's always, the IRS publications. I like to go straight to the source. So the IRS publications, the form instructions, law.cornell, which is a free, Cornell keeps track of all the law codes and all the treasury regulations. It's not the best, you're not going to sit there and read through the tax code. That's tough. But if you are reading these, people have blogs, there's continuing education, seminars, there's lots of good ones. I know Becker CPA is a big one that a lot of people use. There's different places you can get this information, but if you ever need to do the research yourself, the IRS is great. Law.Cornell has the actual tax code and all of the regulations for free. You don't have to pay for any sort of subscription. So sometimes I go straight to that code and be like, okay, I've heard this thing that sounds too good to be true from this CPA blog. Let me see if this actually holds up when I go in and do the research.
I would be curious. I mean, you're a lawyer, right? So you know about that resource, the Cornell one. I think that's interesting. I've actually never heard of that resource before. Do you think that's commonly known amongst people, or do you know it because you're a lawyer?
Yeah, it's pretty commonly known, but it's, a lot of people will read the instructions or the publications and go off of those sort of things. I do have more experience going straight to the code just because I used to work audits and appeals, and so getting the actual tax code down sometimes and say like, nope, this is how it's done, this is how the regulations read. So I do have more experience using it in practice, whereas someone who's doing mostly tax preparation may not use the code that often because the regulations and the publications and the form instructions are going to be better guides. They're much more digestible, and you know how the IRS interprets certain things.
Right.
When we're defending people in audits, the publications maybe have some gaps. And so going to the code and saying, this is supported by the law, that's something that we would do more in audits. So it might be off some people's radar, but it's a great resource.
Okay, that's helpful. It's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Eric, it is so great to see you again. We always love when we get to see and hear from you. So thank you so much. Congrats on coming up on another successful tax season. I can't wait to see your pictures on the golf course. And I hope you have a great next few days.
I will try to keep it on the golf course and not just way out of bounds or something.
Yes.
I love that. Thanks again, Eric. We really appreciate it. I think you gave some great tips on how to just really plan ahead, get yourself mentally out of tax season, think about what's next, figure out who you should talk to, when you should talk to them, and really have really tangible kind of next steps to avoid from feeling kind of overwhelmed. So I love those tips.
Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent.
All right. Well, we'll be back in a week with more on Carrie and Lexi Deduct This. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks for being part of Deduct This, powered by ProConnect Tax. If today's conversation gave you something new to think about, visit accountants.intuit.com for more insights and resources made for professionals like you. We'll be right here, helping you turn expertise into opportunity.